My husband tried to have me declared insane so he could steal my $300,000 inheritance. What he didn't know? I record everything. Let me take you back to where it started. It began with my keys disappearing. Didn't you leave your keys on the counter? Mark asked, tilting his head like a confused puppy. I frowned. Yes, right there. But the counter was empty. I searched the kitchen, the living room, my purse, nothing. An hour later, Mark found them in the freezer. In the freezer, honey, he said with a smile that was just a little too smug. You really need to slow down. You're getting scatterbrained. I laughed it off. Everyone forgets things sometimes. Except, I don't forget. I'm careful. Always have been. Then came the text messages. I'd swear he'd promised to pick up dinner, but when I scrolled back, the messages were gone. Babe, you must have imagined it, he said, shaking his head. You're so stressed lately, I'm worried about you. Imagined it? No, I knew what I saw. But the third incident made everything click into place. My grandmother's inheritance check, $300,000, had been deposited into our joint account. When I mentioned setting up a separate savings account for it, Mark insisted we'd already discussed investing it in his brother's business. We talked about this for hours last weekend, he said with that patient, pitying tone. Don't you remember? You were so excited about the opportunity. I remembered no such conversation, but when I questioned him, his concern deepened. Honey, you're forgetting entire conversations now. Maybe we should see Dr. Blake. That's when I knew. This wasn't forgetfulness, this wasn't stress, this was deliberate. Mark wasn't confused, he was calculating. Every missing text, every misplaced item, every forgotten conversation about my inheritance. It was a pattern, a sick little game designed to make me doubt my own mind, gaslighting. But here's what Mark didn't know. I don't break easily. I don't roll over. And I definitely don't forget. That night, while he snored beside me, I pulled out the small camera I'd bought months ago for security, but never set up. I tucked it into the bookshelf, lens peeking out like an eye. Then I added another in the hallway, another in the kitchen. If Mark wanted to play games with my sanity and my inheritance, fine. I was about to get proof that would destroy him. The footage I captured over the next 2 weeks made my blood run cold. Day 1, Mark moving my keys from the counter to the freezer at 2:17 a.m., then practicing his concerned husband routine in the mirror. Day 3, him deleting text messages from my phone while I showered, erasing his promises about dinner and his lies about the inheritance investment. But then it got worse. Much worse. Day 5, I caught Mark at the kitchen counter, quietly rearranging my personal items in a way that sent a cold prickle down my spine. He handled bottles and notes with strange attention, making everything appear ordinary while he quietly put things out of reach. At my next doctor's appointment, he was already there, ready with his practiced concern. She's been under a lot of stress lately, mixing things up and missing appointments, he told the physician, shaping the narrative against me. Day 8, he intercepted my mail, hiding letters from my lawyer about the inheritance paperwork. When I asked about them, he looked genuinely puzzled. What letters, honey? Maybe you dreamed about them? Day 10 was the breaking point. Mark actually sent fake emails from my work account, then deleted them before I could see the responses. My boss called, confused about a project I'd supposedly volunteered for, but had no memory of discussing. Sarah seems to be having some cognitive issues, I heard Mark tell my boss on the phone later. We're exploring medical options. Each act was crazier than the last, but perfectly calculated. He was building a comprehensive case of my mental instability, while systematically isolating me from my support systems. But the real bombshell came when I caught him on the phone with his brother Ryan in the garage. She's getting worse, Mark whispered into his phone, more confused every day. The doctor's appointment next week should be perfect timing. My hands shook as I cranked up the volume. How much longer? Ryan's voice asked through the speaker. Not long. Once Dr. Blake signs off on the competency evaluation, I'll have full control of the inheritance. $300,000, split just like we discussed. My world tilted. This wasn't just about making me seem forgetful. This was about having me declared mentally incompetent so he could steal my grandmother's life savings. The family dinner this weekend will seal the deal, Mark continued. I'll make sure she has a complete breakdown in front of everyone. Then they'll all see she needs professional help. The call ended, and I sat staring at the frozen screen. Mark wasn't just gaslighting me. He was planning to have me committed to steal my inheritance. But he'd made one crucial mistake. Every word, every manipulation, every crime was now recorded in high definition, and I was about to use every second of it to destroy him. I had 1 week to prepare for Mark's grand finale dinner party. 1 week to turn his carefully planned ambush into his complete destruction. The beauty of it was, he had no idea I knew what was coming. I played my part perfectly. When he suggested having the family over to help support me through this difficult time, I agreed with just the right amount of confused gratitude. "That's so thoughtful," I said, letting my voice waver slightly. "I have been feeling scattered lately." His satisfied smile made my skin crawl, but I matched it with a weak, grateful expression. While Mark was at work, I positioned additional cameras throughout the house. Every angle of our main living areas would be captured. I edited all my evidence into a devastating compilation, organized by date and severity. Most importantly, I called Janet Morrison, the sharpest family lawyer in town. "Financial abuse through gaslighting with documented evidence?" she said after reviewing my videos. "This is prosecutor's dream material. Don't confront him yet. Let him dig his grave deeper first." I also made a strategic call to Dr. Peterson's office. She was a respected psychiatrist, not connected to Mark, and requested an immediate evaluation, explaining that I had evidence my husband was interfering with my well-being and requesting an immediate evaluation. The appointment was set for Monday, the day after the dinner party. Perfect timing. Saturday morning, Mark was practically vibrating with excitement. He'd spent the week escalating his campaign, moving my car keys right before a doctor's appointment, hiding important mail, even rearranging furniture to make me trip. Each incident was captured in crystal-clear video. "Remember," he said, adjusting his shirt for the third time, "if you start feeling confused or overwhelmed tonight, just let me handle everything. I don't want you getting upset in front of the family." I looked at him with what I hoped appeared to be grateful dependence. "What would I do without you?" His predatory smile was answer enough. The guests arrived at 5 sharp, my sister Rebecca, Mark's parents, my brother Daniel, and, in a surprise move that made my heart race, Ryan, Mark's brother and co-conspirator. This was even better than I'd hoped. Both criminals would be present for their exposure. As I served appetizers, I caught Mark and Ryan exchanging meaningful glances. They thought they were about to witness my final breakdown. What they didn't know was that every word, every gesture, every cruel manipulation was being recorded not just by my hidden cameras, but by the moral judgment of people who loved me. The trap was set. Now I just had to let Mark destroy himself. Friday evening arrived with an unexpected twist that nearly destroyed everything. I was in the kitchen pretending to prepare ingredients for Saturday's dinner while actually reviewing my evidence files one last time when Mark's phone rang in the living room. "Hello, Detective Williams." Mark's voice carried clearly through the open doorway. "Yes, I received your message about wanting to speak with me." My blood ran cold. Detective Williams, the very same detective Janet Morrison had told me she'd be contacting. Had Mark somehow found out about my lawyer? "Monday would be perfect," Mark continued smoothly, oozing false concern. "Actually, I'm glad you called. I've been very worried about my wife's mental state. I think she may be having some kind of breakdown." I crept closer to the doorway, my heart hammering. "Well, she's been making very strange accusations. Claims I'm moving her things around, hiding her belongings. Yesterday she accused me of stealing her mail. I think she's imagining things. Paranoid delusions, maybe." He was getting ahead of the story, painting me as unstable before I could expose him. "Of course, Detective," he finished sweetly. "Whatever you need. I just want what's best for Sarah." When the call ended, I hurried back to the kitchen, mind racing. Mark was already weaving his defense, portraying himself as the long-suffering husband dealing with a paranoid wife. If Detective Williams believed him? But then another call started, this one to Ryan. "Change of plans," Mark said sharply. "A detective called. Someone's been asking questions." "About what?" Ryan's voice was tight with worry. "I don't know, but we need to accelerate the timeline. The dinner party has to work tomorrow night. If Sarah doesn't unravel in front of everyone, we may not get another chance." "What are you suggesting?" Mark's voice dropped to a low, chilling whisper. "I think we help her along. A stage slip-up, A foggy moment, something undeniable, just enough to convince everyone she's losing control. My stomach twisted. They wanted to engineer my downfall, to trap me in front of friends and family. And if that doesn't work? Ryan asked. Then we go to Plan D. All we need is an opportunity. Plan D? What was that? How far was he willing to go? I backed away from the doorway, my body trembling. That night, I made 3 crucial phone calls. First to Janet Morrison. They're escalating. Detective Williams called Mark, and now they're planning to humiliate me at dinner tomorrow. Sarah, this is dangerous. You need to get out of that house right now. No, if I run, they'll just vanish and start over with someone else. I have to finish this. Then we'll call in backup. I'll contact Detective Williams directly. He'll have unmarked units watching your house during the dinner. Second, to Dr. Peterson's emergency line, leaving a message warning her that my husband was trying to set me up as unstable and asked for discreet documentation of what really happened. She called me back almost immediately. Mrs. Davidson, this is extremely risky. Perhaps you should consider... Doctor, I'm going to stop him, but I need proof. Third, to my brother Daniel. I need your help tomorrow night, and I can't explain everything yet. Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on? If Mark tries to corner me in front of everyone, I need you to distract him. Spill a drink, start an argument, anything. Can you do that? Of course, but... And Daniel? No matter how crazy I might seem tomorrow, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Always. Saturday morning dawned gray and ominous. Mark was unusually attentive, bringing me coffee in bed, complimenting my appearance, acting like the devoted husband he never really was. You seem nervous about tonight, he observed, watching me carefully. Just want everything to go well, I said with a practiced smile. Don't worry, sweetheart, he murmured. After tonight, all your worries will be over. The words sent a chill racing down my spine. While Mark was out on a grocery run, which I suspected was more plotting, I made my final preparations. I checked all my hidden cameras. I uploaded backup copies of evidence to a secure server that would automatically release everything to Janet if I didn't check in by midnight. When Mark returned, he was practically glowing with anticipation. Everything ready for tonight? He asked, kissing my cheek with lips that felt like ice. Everything's perfect, I replied. And it was. My trap was set, my evidence was secure, and my allies were in place. Mark thought tonight would be my destruction. Instead, it would be his. Mark's performance began the moment everyone sat down, but tonight he had backup. Honey, didn't you say you were making those stuffed mushrooms my mom loves? He asked with perfectly practiced concern. I blinked, genuinely confused for a moment. We'd never discussed mushrooms. Ever. No, I made the bruschetta, like we planned. Sweetie, we specifically talked about mushrooms yesterday morning. You said you had Mom's recipe. He turned to his mother with a helpless expression. Mom, didn't Sarah call you about the mushroom recipe? My mother-in-law looked uncomfortable. Well, no, but maybe she forgot to call. Perfect setup. Mark had primed her to expect my forgetfulness. Heat flooded my cheeks. The humiliation was real even though I knew it was manufactured. I'm sure I said bruschetta. Of course you did, honey. His voice dripped with patronizing kindness. Don't worry about it. Perfect. Another lie for the video. Dr. Blake was already making notes, his pen scratching quietly against his notepad. I caught glimpses of his writing. Subject denies recent conversations, defensive when corrected. The manipulation escalated during the main course. Mark suddenly stood up mid-conversation about Daniel's new job. Oh, Sarah, did you remember to turn off the oven? His voice carried just the right note of patient concern. Yes, I think so. You think so? He was already moving toward the kitchen. Remember what happened last Tuesday? Everyone stared at me. What happened on Tuesday? Rebecca asked, her voice tight with worry. Nothing happened, I said quickly, but Mark was already shaking his head with practiced sadness. She left it on all night, could have burned the house down. He disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard the oven door open and close. When he returned, his face was grave. 450 degrees, still on. The silence was deafening. I knew he'd turned on the oven himself during his earlier trip for wine, but doubt crept in anyway. Dr. Blake wrote furiously. Sarah, Rebecca said carefully, that's really dangerous. What if you'd gone to bed? Another perfect lie for the cameras. But Mark wasn't finished. As the evening progressed, he began telling stories I'd never heard before, stories that painted me as increasingly unstable. Last week I found Sarah in the garage at 2 a.m. organizing tools, he said with a concerned shake of his head. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was preparing for the inspection. What inspection? There was no inspection. I stared at him in shock. This had never happened. And Thursday morning? Ryan chimed in smoothly. When I called to check on you both, Sarah answered and didn't recognize my voice. She asked who I was 3 times. Also a complete lie. Ryan hadn't called on Thursday at all. Dr. Blake leaned forward with professional interest. Mrs. Davidson, do you remember these incidents? No, because they didn't happen, I said firmly. Mark and Ryan exchanged a meaningful look. Honey, Mark said gently, denial is common with these types of memory issues. What memory issues? I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Sarah, my mother-in-law said softly, Mark's been very worried about you. He's called us several times about these episodes. Episodes. The word hit like a slap. Rebecca was looking at me with genuine fear now. Sarah, remember when you called me last month crying about how someone had been in the house moving your things around? You were so upset, but Mark was right there. He hadn't moved anything. My heart stopped. I had called Rebecca about my things being moved, but I'd never told her Mark was home when it happened. Mark had coached her on what to say. I think, Dr. Blake said slowly, we might be looking at early-stage dementia or possibly a psychiatric break. The paranoid ideation, the memory gaps, the aggressive denial. I'm not in denial, I snapped. They're lying. Mark reached for my hand with fake tenderness. Sweetheart, no one's lying. We're all here because we love you and want to help. The room was closing in on me. My own family was looking at me like I was a stranger, someone dangerous and unpredictable. Dr. Blake's pen kept moving across his notepad, documenting my every word as evidence of my instability. But then Daniel spoke up for the first time all evening. This is interesting, my brother said quietly. Mark, when exactly did you start noticing these changes in Sarah? Mark shifted slightly. A few months ago, maybe longer. Funny thing, Daniel continued, his voice casual but his eyes sharp. I've been keeping a journal for the past year. Work stress, you know, and I have entries about every conversation I've had with Sarah. Phone calls, visits, everything. Dr. Blake's pen paused. Mark went very still. According to my notes, Daniel said, pulling out his phone, Sarah has been completely normal in every interaction. Sharp, funny, remembering details about my life that I'd forgotten myself, right up until 3 weeks ago, when you started calling me about her problems. The temperature in the room shifted. Daniel, Mark said carefully, sometimes family members are the last to notice. 3 weeks ago, Daniel interrupted, the same week Sarah's inheritance was finalized. Interesting timing. Dr. Blake cleared his throat. Mr. Davidson, perhaps we should focus on your wife's current presentation. My sister's current presentation, Daniel said, standing up slowly, is that of someone who's been systematically manipulated and is now being gaslit in front of her own family. The room exploded into chaos. Mark started talking rapidly about Daniel not understanding the situation. Rebecca looked confused and scared. Dr. Blake was insisting that family denial was common in these cases, but I wasn't listening to any of them because I was finally ready to stop the performance. You're all right, I said, standing slowly. I do need help, and I think it's time I got it. Mark's satisfied smirk faltered as he realized I wasn't following his script. I'll be right back, I continued, my voice steady for the first time all evening. There's something I need to show everyone. Something important. As I walked toward the living room, I heard Mark's voice behind me, tight with barely controlled panic. Maybe we should let Sarah rest. She's had a long evening. No, I called back, reaching for the laptop I'd strategically placed on the side table. I think everyone should see this, especially Dr. Blake. Dr. Blake went rigid in his chair. Mrs. Davidson, I think it's time for the truth, I said simply. When the screen lit up, Mark realized the dinner wasn't his performance. It was mine. And I had footage of everything, including Dr. Blake taking money to falsify psychiatric evaluations. Sarah, what are you doing? Mark's voice had lost all its artificial warmth. For the first time in months, I heard genuine emotion from him, terror. I connected the laptop to our television, my fingers steady as I navigated to the video compilation I'd prepared. I'm showing everyone the truth about who I really am, and who you really are. The first image filled the screen. Mark, alone in our kitchen at 2:17 a.m., carefully moving my keys from the counter to the freezer. The timestamp was crystal clear. The deliberate nature of his actions was undeniable. The room went dead silent. Family stared at each other in confusion. What did this mean? This is from last Tuesday, I said calmly. The same keys he helped me find the next morning. They all gasped in shock. The video continued with me giving a running commentary as if I was a tour guide. Mark deleting text messages from my phone. Mark rearranging my personal items to stage confusion and doubt. Mark practicing his concerned husband routine in the hallway mirror, rehearsing his lines like an actor preparing for audition. I watched my family's faces transform as the truth unfolded. Confusion gave way to shock, then to something harder and angrier. But I wasn't done. This next part is my personal favorite. The garage footage played. Mark's voice filled the room, cold and calculating as he bragged about breaking my sanity and planning my breakdown at tonight's dinner. When his recorded voice said, "Once Dr. Blake signs off on the competency evaluation, I'll have full control of the inheritance," I paused the video. $300,000, I said quietly. My grandmother's life savings that he planned to steal by having me declared insane. Ryan had gone white as a sheet, recognizing his own voice on the recording discussing their split. Mark lunged toward the laptop. "Turn it off! Turn that garbage off right now!" But my brother Daniel was faster, stepping between Mark and the television. "I don't think so. We all need to see exactly what kind of man my sister married." "There's more," I announced, clicking to the next file. "This conversation happened 3 days ago." Mark's voice again, but this time bragging to Ryan about the scope of their plan. "The beauty is, she'll never see it coming. By the time I'm done, she'll be grateful for a nice quiet room somewhere safe, and I'll have access to everything. The inheritance, the house, her entire life." Ryan's voice responded, "How many others have you done this to?" The room erupted. My family exploded with outrage while Mark spun desperately, looking for allies and finding none. "This is insane!" he sputtered. "She set me up! She's been planning this!" "You're right," I interrupted calmly. "I did plan this. After months of you planning to destroy my sanity and steal my inheritance." I opened my manila folder, spreading bank statements across the coffee table. Here's the financial trail. Small transfers from our joint account to one I've never seen. $50 here, $100 there. My inheritance money, stolen piece by piece. My mother-in-law was staring at her son like she'd never seen him before. "Mark, is this really what you've become?" But I had one final bombshell. "There's something else you should all know," I said. "I've already filed for divorce. Janet Morrison has all the evidence. The financial transfers Mark made constitute theft. His interference with my mental health is assault, and this entire gaslighting campaign is documented psychological abuse." Mark's face went from white to green. "Sarah, please, we can work this out." "Work it out?" I stood up slowly, feeling power flow through me like electricity. "You want to work things out with the woman you tried to drive insane? You want to negotiate with someone whose life you've sabotaged?" I pulled out one final document. "Restraining order, granted yesterday based on evidence of systematic abuse. You have 1 hour to pack essentials and leave. You can't throw me out. Watch me." I looked around the room at my family, their faces reflecting horror and admiration in equal measure. "Oh, and Ryan? The police will want to speak with you about your role in this conspiracy. I'd suggest getting a lawyer." As both brothers realized their perfect plan had become their perfect destruction, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time, complete and total victory. The fallout was swift and devastating. Within 48 hours, Mark and Ryan were both arrested. It turned out my case had exposed a larger pattern. 2 other women came forward with similar stories of gaslighting and financial abuse after seeing news coverage of the arrests. The divorce proceedings were a formality. Mark's lawyer took one look at my video evidence and advised immediate settlement. I got the house, my inheritance was fully restored, and Mark was ordered to pay all legal fees plus damages for psychological trauma. But the real satisfaction came from Dr. Peterson's evaluation. Mark had smugly waived a psychiatric statement from Dr. Blake signed days earlier, claiming I was unfit to manage my affairs. He thought it was checkmate. But what he didn't expect was Dr. Peterson's evaluation, written after a full exam and supported by my recordings. Her letter stated I showed no signs of impairment, and that the very symptoms Mark described were consistent with systematic psychological abuse. The letter went straight to the prosecutor's office. Mark tried every legal maneuver possible. He claimed the videos violated his privacy, that I'd entrapped him, that the evidence was inadmissible. None of it worked. You can't claim privacy protection for crimes committed in your own home. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later, but Mark took a plea deal rather than face a jury with video evidence of his manipulation and the theft of my inheritance. 3 years in prison. His brother Ryan got 2 years for conspiracy. Dr. Blake didn't escape either. When Dr. Peterson's letter and my recordings reached the judge, Blake's role in Mark's scheme came under scrutiny. Within weeks, the state medical board suspended his license pending investigation, and whispers of criminal charges for fraud began circling. He had gambled his career on Mark's lies, and lost. The day the sentences were announced, I sat in my quiet kitchen, the same kitchen where Mark had been hiding my belongings and gaslighting me into doubting my sanity. I made myself exactly what I wanted for dinner. No second guessing, no walking on eggshells, no wondering if I was remembering things correctly. Just peace. Mark had gambled everything on my weakness, on his ability to convince me I was losing my mind. He'd counted on my shame, my silence, my willingness to doubt myself, rather than challenge his version of reality. He'd lost everything because he underestimated my strength. As I cleaned up after dinner, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back at me was stronger, clearer, more certain than ever before. Mark had tried to steal my mind, my money, and my future. Instead, he'd given me something precious, absolute proof that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Did I go too far, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Looking back now, some people think 3 years in prison was harsh for just gaslighting, but those people don't understand what systematic psychological abuse actually does to a person. They don't know what it's like to question every memory, doubt every instinct, wonder if you're slowly losing your mind while the person who promised to love and protect you systematically destroys your sense of reality. Mark didn't just steal money, he tried to steal my sanity, and he almost succeeded. If I hadn't started recording, if I hadn't fought back with evidence, I would have ended up in a psychiatric facility while he lived in my house and spent my grandmother's money. He would have gotten away with it completely. But here's what I learned. Abusers count on your silence. They count on your shame. They count on your willingness to doubt yourself instead of trusting your instincts. They don't count on you fighting back with proof. If my story sounds familiar, if you recognize these patterns in your own life or someone you love, please know this. You're not crazy. Your perceptions matter. Your memories are valid. And you deserve so much better than someone who tries to convince you otherwise. Have you ever experienced gaslighting? How did you handle it? What would you do in my situation? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed it, remember to like this story and subscribe to the channel for more tales of revenge and vindication. And don't leave yet. The next revenge story just popped up on screen. Trust me, it's even wilder than this one. Remember, the truth has a way of surfacing, especially when you're brave enough to document it. Trust yourself, fight for yourself, and never let anyone convince you that their lies are your reality. You're stronger than you know.